Welcome to My Spoonie Sisters, featuring stories from special guests dedicated to empowering those with chronic illness. Our goal? To connect people and provide the support and tools they need to live a better life. For those with chronic illness, our energy levels just fade faster. We must be more purposeful with the spoons allotted to us. So grab your coffee or tea, sister, and tune in as My Spoonie Sisters share stories of living with chronic illness. Well, hello, my Spoonie Sisters. It's your host, Gracefully Jen, and I am thrilled to bring to you a new Spoonie Sisters. Hi, Delicia. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I was so excited to have you on.
Thank you. It's Delicia, just FYI.
I said it wrong, didn't I?
Everybody does. Everybody does.
I don't know why. It just sounded so eloquent to say it that way, didn't I?
Okay. Spanish people love it that way. And my last name is long too, so they always say Niami. I'm like, it's like Miami, but with an N. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, what a fun name. I love it. All right, Delicia, how are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. So if you don't mind, let's just kind of jump in and tell people why we have you on here and what your diagnosis story is.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually perfect timing because my second book is about to come out in the next couple of months. And that's where my diagnosis story pops in, is in the second book. Because as you know, I did a trilogy memoir series. And so the first book was sort of my adolescent youth up to age 17, which I was happy and healthy, thank goodness. And, you know, it wasn't until 23 that it hit me, and 25 that I got diagnosed. So I actually remember the day that it hit me. And yeah, it's crazy, right? So I was living in Switzerland at the time, and I was living in Bern. And it's one of my fondest memories living there. But I was working on a farm with horses and dogs, and I had my cat with me, Cow, who had come with me from California to Switzerland. And what I didn't realize at the time, I found out years and years later, is that I have a severe allergy to barley. And I didn't know this. And so that's what all the hay in Europe and everything is made from. And before this happened, if you read the first book, you'll see I had a lot of trauma and a lot of stress in my life. And a lot of that I realized in the third book. You'll read about my healing journey, and I did some breath work. And I went back to the time when I was 4, when I was kidnapped and taken to Baghdad. And that's how the first book starts. It's a chapter called We're Going to Disneyland. So I was kidnapped and taken to Baghdad when I was 4. And when I went and did my breath work, I saw my child, my little girl, holding all of that angst for the entire year we were in Baghdad, right here in my solar plexus. And just like I saw myself just tight, my whole body was just tight. And all of my fear and anger and frustration and just, I don't even want to call it fear. I think it was terror at that point, you know, and it was all in my belly. And so when I'm 23 and I'm living in Switzerland, not knowing all these various things, one of the questions you had in your precursor, which kind of made me laugh, is what would you have done different if you would have known? And one thing I thought about was like, you know, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. So during that time, it was all about eating your Wheaties, wheat. What we didn't know is that our wheat was filled with GMOs. Nobody told us that. We didn't even know what a GMO was back then. And I believe, personally, I'm not a doctor, but I think with all of my trauma and all of the setup that my body had and my cellular memory stored all of that. And I read a book by Bessel van der Kolk, which confirmed this later in life, but that my cellular memory stored all of that. Has to somewhere in your body, right? In the meanwhile, I'm like denying all this happened, all my trauma, all this, all that. And when I'm 23, I'm in the midst of living in Switzerland. I have this very emotional breakdown because I miss my family unlike I've ever even imagined that I could miss them. Like beyond my wildest dreams, especially my mom. Like there was no tomorrow. I missed her so much. I felt physical pain that I missed my family so bad. I had a ton of friends there, but there was something missing. It was like there was no mac and cheese. There was no good Mexican food. It wasn't home. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't home. And I'm a California native. And so as much as I loved Switzerland, and I love Switzerland, but it wasn't home. And so I was feeling all this stress and at the same time breathing in all this barley from cleaning the hay every day. And it was snowy. So when I'm stomping on the cow poop, like it's making the steam rise up. So I'm actually like inhaling that. And I didn't think about this for years later, right? But I kind of put it all together. So this one day when I was in Switzerland, I remember the day very clearly that like my stool changed. It was always really regular, really normal. That day it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is not normal, like huge and like not normal, you know? So I was like, something's wrong. And I worked for someone who was very, very, she was a German lady and very staunch and very mean and cruel, I would say. She was cruel, you know, and it was a tough time. And so that turned into days of turning into diarrhea, and then the blood came, and then, you know, the cramping started. And I was just like, what the hell? Something is wrong with me so bad, you know, and I couldn't figure it out, even though, and I talk about this in my first book very intentionally. They kind of flow and they kind of interconnect in places very intentionally. And I talk about in my first book how my uncle made me watch him change his colostomy bag when I was 13. And it was very uncomfortable for me. And I remember crying out to God, please, no, I never want to crap in a bag, please, you know? And so when this happened, I didn't really put two and two together that my uncle had Crohn's disease. I mean, he actually had been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, but he had everything taken out except for a portion of his small intestine. So UC didn't make sense at that point. So I thought he had to have Crohn's. They just misdiagnosed him because it was too early or something. And so, you know, the fact that he had it, I didn't put two and two together. And I ended up coming home. It took about 1.5 years to get diagnosed. And, you know, took everything under the sun that the doctors told me to take, and nothing helped, nothing helped, nothing helped. It wasn't until my mom thought, even when I went in the hospital, I had been seeing the doctor. I went back, and with my mother, I had 103.4 fever. I had jaundice. I weighed 117 and 3/4 pounds. I was like skin and bones. My bones were like popping out, and I was emaciated. And the doctor said, we're not going to admit her. And my mom had to like fight to get me admitted. Yeah, exactly. So when they finally admitted me and I was on the table, he was doing the colonoscopy, and I was all, ooh, this Demerol is fun, you know? And then I hear him say like, this looks like Crohn's disease, young lady. And by that point I had done the research, and I had worked for a biotech company, Santa Cruz Biotechnology. So I had a lot of people in my ear about what it could be, because they would hear me in the bathroom. You know, there's no escaping this at work. There's no escaping it. And so it's so hard to talk about it, but yeah, it's I still remember it like it was yesterday when he called. He said, this looks like Crohn's disease, young lady. And immediately I snapped out of it. And I was like, no, because I knew how much worse it was than ulcerative colitis, you know? And I was just, he was like, I'm sorry, young lady. And I was just like, no. It was like, it was so devastating. It was so devastating. But, you know, I mean, and after that, I even went to see a different GI, and I asked her about getting pregnant. And I was, you know, at that point I was 25 years old. And even though I'm gay, I still thought about having kids and like, and so I asked this doctor, if what she thought about me having kids, and she just like looked out the window. She couldn't even look at me, and so it was really it was rough.
Well, and to be 25 years old, feeling like everything that you look for as a future is just being torn away from you.
Yeah. And
There's no way to describe that.
A life full of
Absolutely.
pain looking, and they tell you, oh, there's no cure, but we can, treat it with medication. But I didn't realize at that time that didn't mean treating my pain, and if the medication didn't work, I didn't realize how intense the pain would get. I mean, I just had surgery on a minor, like outpatient general kind of go into the doctor's office surgery on a fistula, which I didn't know was a fistula until Thursday. I kind of had an idea, but I wasn't sure. But the doctor was just like, they don't tell you how much pain that you're going to be in, and about the fistulas, and about, all of the different things that it can do to your body, the arthritis, the this, the that. It's like, we can treat it with medication, but can you? And so that, I tried for a long time to didn't take meds for 20 years, and I was doing okay. I would still be in pain. I would treat it with mostly with what I ingested into my mouth. I watch the food that I eat and try to do really good. But, I mean, I don't think that, and I come to the realization of this because I can't beat myself up, because I know I did everything in my power possible to help myself. Even though prednisone makes me want to commit suicide, I took it in because I was so sick. I had done a hyperbaric chamber, which really helped the Crohn's disease. I was in really bad straits, and I actually did a GoFundMe, and my friends helped me, and I did 67 sessions in a hyperbaric chamber. And I felt the best that I had felt in 30 years, and I was pooping solid, and I'm sorry to say, but like I had ridges, and it was like, what is going on here? I felt I had energy. It was amazing. And I was planning on going back once every 6 months for a maintenance dose, but COVID hit and they closed. And then and this is all in my third book. And then I couldn't get treatment there, so I had to turn to medication. And the only thing the doctor could give me is prednisone. And so I took the prednisone, and as I was weaning off of the prednisone, I started the prednisone probably in November 2019. August 5th of 2020, while I was still on the prednisone, my colon ruptured. And I had to be rushed to the hospital. And I was at the hospital, rolled in the door at 12:02 and on the operating table by 12:05.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was serious. And I almost died, and it's really scary. I have the pictures of the perf that was in my colon, and so now I have a colostomy, my very own colostomy bag for life, just like my uncle. So it's, kind of interesting how things come full circle. And that's why I called my series Resilient AF, because life throws you a whole bunch of shit, and we just have to deal with it as it comes, and roll with the punches and be as happy as we can be. And it's hard to be when we're in so much pain. So I love this spoonie theory and like how it works and how to explain it to people, based on that. It's really an interesting concept.
Absolutely. And so, you've been going through this, as early as age 23, and now here you are, your worst fear happened. How did you work through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. At first I was angry, and it was real hard to look at this bag when I woke up in the hospital. Ooh, I've never talked about this on a podcast before, so yeah, I was really real hard to look at it. I was really ashamed. I had already felt like I lost all my dignity around this. The first time I had to be in the hospital with Crohn's, when I was with somebody with just a freaking headache and I was smelling up the room, you know, just and crying out with the just agonizing, crushing pain. That's what I was going to say about the surgery earlier, is that the aftermath of that, I felt like, is this the surgery pain that people take pain meds for? Because this ain't nothing compared to my Crohn's cramping. Like, it's like 10 million times worse, It was just like, it's horrific. I can't even put it into words what Crohn's pain feels like. And I tried in my books, but I can't explain it to people if they are not living with it. That's anybody who has Crohn's understands. But I just kind of, as time went on, I realized that the bag saved my life, and I named her. I named her Adia. That's my stoma's name, after the Sarah McLachlan song. And if you listen to the words, or you know the words, you'll understand why. But it's a beautiful song. I reached out to Sarah McLachlan on Instagram, but I don't know if she appreciated that or not. But I told her I named my stoma after her song because, I thought that was a pretty, freeing, liberating thing for me to do. I think that was the first step for me, was acceptance, naming her, and giving grace and gratitude to my bag. And then once I realized that my life was starting to get a lot better, that I wasn't in the bathroom for 20 to 40 minutes at a time when I went out with friends. I didn't get the looks when I came back to the table of oh my God, are you okay? I didn't feel that stigma anymore. And it started to feel good. Of course, I had a different kind of stigma with the bag because, I have a lot of challenges wearing clothes now around this thing. I have a lot of challenges, but the benefit is I'm not running to the bathroom all the time. I'm not having to sit in the restroom for 20, 30, 40, 50, sometimes 3 hours at a time, it makes a big difference. And so I'm grateful for it now. One of the first things I was able to do was I went with my brother from another mother, Tom. He's actually mentioned in the books. We went kayaking, and I thought to myself, I could have never done this before. There's no way I could have sat in a kayak with strangers and been in the middle of the ocean and not be stressed out about having to poop straight up, So yeah, it's been a challenge, but I think now I embrace it. Like everything else in my life, I've come to know that there's a reason or a rhyme for it, one way or another. That's why my third book is called The Queen of Silver Linings. People sometimes get annoyed with me, but I don't care, because you know what? There's always a positive. Sometimes you have to look really, really, really hard for it. And I haven't quite found it yet with Crohn's, but I'm still looking. I'm still looking. I haven't given up.
You're going to find it, and then you're going to tell us all about it.
I am. I hope so.
So now that you have this bag to deal with, do you still have any kind of pain? I
do. I just got out of hospital. I was in November for 11 days. And like I said, I have this fistula now, and I'm on Biologics, which is really scary for me because my brother died of PML, which is the main side effect of all the Biologics. And there's a thing that 50% of the population has in their body called the JC virus. And if your immunity gets low enough, the JC virus can flip to PML without you knowing it. And then my brother died literally within 2 months. He died at 45. So yeah, it was and he had AIDS, so his immune system was very low. But yeah, I'm in the same boat now where I'm on biologics. It's scary, but I had to say, you know what? Like, I have to figure out quality of life because I didn't have any. Even with the bag, I didn't have any. I was in intense pain every single minute of every single day. And now with the biologics, that's helped me quite a bit. They also found something called a CMV when I was in the hospital, cytomegalovirus or something like that. And so they had me on an antiviral. So for a while, I'm like, I don't know what's working, but something is, And so I'm feeling better unless I ingest or eat something, I drink or eat something that's not good for me, like sugar, which I have a weakness for. But
don't we all?
Can't beat myself up. I gotta love the chocolate.
Absolutely. And we got to treat ourselves a little bit.
Exactly. I tell myself that, you know what? You dealt with a lot of shit in life. You're allowed to go get ice cream every now and then. It's fine.
We might pay for it later, but it's good in the moment.
Yeah. And I find that if I eat like a little bit of sugar, I'm okay. But my problem is I can't just eat like a little bit of sugar. It's like a box of Pringles, like you can't just eat one. They're gone by the time, That's my problem with sugar. Don't give me a box of See's candy, please, and thank you.
I'm that way with Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, I'm so glad I can't even buy them, having the gluten problem.
I have a thing for the tagalongs, the mixture of the chocolate and the peanut butter.
Oh, I used to love the Samoas.
Ooh, yeah. My husband loves those.
Delicious. But no more. I can't have them because of gluten, so that makes it easy for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
People always freak out about how I'm so strict with what I eat, except for the sugar. But because I always tell them, like, if you felt the pain that I felt after you ate that food, trust me, you wouldn't eat it either. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't even have Crohn's. I have irritable bowel, which they thought was colitis years ago.
I'm so glad it wasn't.
It's been a battle. It's been unique. But I'll tell you, just from my experiences, you eat something one time and it makes you feel like death rolled over and you never want to eat it again, or you want to avoid it for the next 3 months.
I think I haven't had popcorn for probably 28 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like no desire, because I know how it feels. Yeah. It's crazy. And I stopped eating meat because of that too. I mean, I eat fish, but I stopped eating meat in the year 2000 because I feel like beef and chicken and pork and stuff is like hurting my stomach. And I could have been wrong, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know that we have much control no matter what we do. It seems like this thing has a mind of its own, honestly.
Calling all Spoonies. As a host of a chronic illness podcast, nothing lights up my day more than hearing from you, our incredible listeners. Whether it's a topic close to your heart that you want us to uncover, or you are keen to show your own journey as a guest on our show, your voice matters. Living with chronic illness can often feel isolating, but through the power of podcasting, we can come together as a community to uplift, educate, and inspire one another. Your stories, insights, and questions drive the conversations we have and the topics we explore. So if there's something on your mind, a story that you are just itching to share, or a guest you'd love to hear from, don't hesitate to reach out. Your voice is not only welcomed here, but celebrated. Let's continue to amplify the voices of those living with chronic illnesses and create a space where everyone feels heard, supported, and empowered. Together, we are stronger. Absolutely. And I think we still yearn for some way of controlling how we feel. And we're going to take all the steps that we can to make it a little better, but that doesn't mean it's always going to work.
Right. Exactly.
So what does your Spoonie toolkit look like?
I do a lot of meditation. For me, that's a really key factor. I notice if I stop meditating, I change as a person, my life around me changes, the way people treat me change. It's really interesting, actually. Um, and so that's helped a lot. And besides that, I don't know. There's not a lot that when I'm, I guess my family is another thing. I would say my friends who have been my family, who are there for me, who understand me so much more than my blood family because they've taken the time to care enough to understand me, and they get where I'm coming from. They know, like some people, like my best friend, she can see it in my face, and immediately she's like, "Are you okay? I saw pain." And I'm like, "Do you know how much I appreciate that?" Like so many people don't see it. My boss is also one of my best friends, and I've worked for her for almost 20 years, and she sees it, and she gets me. Like she said to me when I started taking biologics, I was trying to explain it to people because I, I was beside myself. I couldn't fathom the poison that I was putting in my body. It felt like I was intentionally poisoning my body, and I didn't like it, and I still don't like it. And she said to me, "You know, what everybody else was telling me, you should just be happy it's working. You should just be happy it's doing something. You should just be." And she said to me, "No, I get it, because you're like the Amish. It's like living your whole life without power and electricity. And now you're told you have to use this in order to survive." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly what it is." It's like, and she said, it's almost like going against your religion. It's like your internal grain. I said, that's exactly what it is. I'm such a natural, I don't even like to take Tylenol. And now I'm putting biologics in my body. So, yeah, I have to yeah, my friends are really people that I lean on and somebody that I go to when I need to reach into that toolkit for sure.
Now, you're taking biologics. I want to ask you this because I'm sure listeners are going to be curious. Are you doing infusion or are you taking it orally?
I'm doing the Inflamex, which is the new version of Remicade. I wouldn't have done it because the reason why I haven't done it for so many years is because I've been so paranoid about PML. But my doctor has been phenomenal. I mean, he's an anomaly for Kaiser. He is mind-blowing GI guy, and he did so much research, and every question I asked him in the hospital he came back and had an answer for. And this that I'm taking is the lowest risk of PML biologics that's out there by far, and it's one of the oldest biologics that's out there as well, and it's not one of the ones you see all the commercials for. It's called Inflamex or Fliximab. Infliximab is what it's
Oh, and infliximab. Yep.
called.
Okay, so what exactly is PML?
Progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. Basically, it is a virus that eats away the myelin sheath in your brain. It's basically a really rapid Alzheimer's. So, my brother, I talked to him. This is my brother that was put up for adoption that I met when I was 15. He and I were super close, closer than my brother was that I was kidnapped with and grew up with, although he and I are close now. But my other brother and I were tight, but he called me from Florida one day and he sounded drunk as a skunk. And I was like, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I only have one drink." "Yeah." And I'm like, "Whoa, something's wrong." About a week later, my then 10-year-old or 11, maybe 12-year-old nephew. Yeah, he was 12 at the time. He called me about a week later and said, "Auntie, my dad's in the hospital. He just had a stroke." And I was like, "Well, that's weird because when he called me like a week ago, I thought there's something wrong. And well, turns out he hadn't told anybody that he had AIDS for 10 years. Yeah. And I found out after his doctor faxed his paperwork to my work, And I got his paperwork and I'm like, this guy who's come over for Thanksgiving and cut himself like around my kids never said that he was HIV positive. Like, yeah, mind blowing, right? So mind blowing. So I even asked him straight up, but he said, no, that paperwork must be wrong. And like, yeah, crazy, right? Wasn't
What?
Yeah, it wasn't until we were in I had flown him out from Florida to here, and we were at the ER that the ER doctor says, "So, Mr. Simon, it looks like you have HIV for the last 10 years." And he said, "Yes." And I'm like, "I'm going to kill you, guy." But like, yeah, crazy, right? And she's like, "How do you get it? Sex?" I'm like, "Oh my God, you're such a jack." So like, yeah, it's just crazy. But he, after that, he got in the hospital. The doctor said, like, we're going to do a surgery to make sure that's what it is. They had to cut open his brain. They took a little piece of it and they biopsied it. And they said, usually once we check it and we verify that's what they called the whole family in, said, once we verify that's what it is, it's about 2 months before they pass. And, yeah, I ended up doing like a Oprah's Big Give thing for him and did like a last wish thing at Giants Stadium for him and stuff. The Giants were amazing. Um, and then he passed almost exactly 2 months to the date of that. And he just had his 45th birthday like a week prior.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I feel like that's not something that doctors warn us about.
Never. And honestly, it's not something that doctors even know about. I know more than half of the doctors do. It's crazy. And like, I've asked my GI's like, way back when I got tested for it, for the virus that switches, right? I asked my GI and he's like, well, I'm going to have to send you to the infectious disease doctor. I don't know how to do those tests. And I'm like, how do you not know when you deal with people who have Crohn's disease and all the research is going to biologics? Nothing but biologics, by the way. All of the money for research is going. I mean, I've had several doctors and gastroenterologists tell me this. All of the money for research is now going in the direction of biologics. That's it, nothing else. And like, how do you not automatically test people for the JC virus? How do you not? Because I asked Dr. Chow, my doctor, how do I check myself to make sure that my levels aren't getting so low that it's not going to flip? And he goes, there's no way we can do that, honestly. But they're checking my blood every month. They're checking my white cell count. But like, there's got to be, with technology, there's got to be a way to check that stuff to make sure, like, oh, your immunity is going a little too low. Let's hold back on the medicine a little bit this time, and it's okay if you're a little bit sick. We don't want you to die with PML. I mean, there's ways to check that. Why aren't they checking it? I had a fight, to get my JC positive negative test. And it came back negative. The first 2 times it came back negative, and I don't know why. But Kaiser retested it again, and I didn't even know this until I went back to the doctor, and he said, "Oh, no, you're positive." And I said, "I thought I was negative. I read it on my test." And he goes, "No, but then they resent it in for a deeper dive test, and you were positive." Crazy.
And, I've been on Biologics since 2013. First time I ever heard about it was from you today.
Are you kidding? I'm sorry. Like, I started a website called whatthehealth.net, even though it's not up and running right now. Like, I feel like I should get it back up and running, because what the health? Like, what is going on in this country? How do doctors not inform you of this? My brother died of this. And yes, he had AIDS. And yes, your immune system has to be really low. But some people do get to that point on. And here's the other thing. When I was taking the biologics and I was taking the antiviral at the same time, they didn't tell me the antiviral also lowered your immunity. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I told the infectious disease doctor about my brother's issue, that he died of I told her exactly all this. She freaked out and said, "You need to stop taking the antiviral immediately." So there's something to it. It's not, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And for most of my illness life, I have been on a mixture of methotrexate, which is like low dose chemo, mixed with a biologic. And at one point for me, I think it was 2015 or 16, I was on Actemra, and it lowered my white blood count so much that they were like, you can't take this anymore. This is not good for you. This is scary.
Scary.
Yeah.
They shouldn't even be doing that to our bodies. Like, isn't there some sort of alternative? But there's no money going to any sort of alternative. It's mind
Wow.
blowing, you know? It's mind blowing. Because before my
Mhm.
colon ruptured, I actually had a GI who fired me. She said, I can't be your doctor anymore because one day, she was right. One day you're going to go into an emergent situation. Your colon's going to rupture, and it's because I don't have any medication that I can give you, because all I have is biologics and prednisone and everything else you're allergic to, like all the sulfur drugs, all the tetra drugs. She goes, I don't have anything I can give you. And I'm like, she goes, I can't see you anymore as a patient because I don't want to be there when your colon ruptures in the hospital. And I'm like,
She was
kind
scared
of
for
wish,
you.
yeah, she did. I kind of wish she was there, but I mean, what can I do? I'm scared shitless that I'm going to get this PML. I still am, you know, but what can I do? It's a quality of life, either I spend all day in pain in bed all day, or I'm up and I'm able to be resilient and do what I got to do and take a chance. And I guess life's all about taking chances. So that's what I did. I took a chance, and it's it's been worth living. I mean, I went to a dance the other day with my friend, and I wore a mask the whole time, of course, except when we were outside. But I mean, like, it's worth it. I go to dinner with people and I wear a mask the whole time, but it's worth it just to have that social interaction, to feel like you're living, to feel like you're alive, to feel like you're living a life worth living, as they say in DBT, which is also a big part of my toolkit. Dialectical behavioral therapy. It's an amazing tool, and therapy has been an amazing tool for me in general, but DBT has been just really amazing.
Well, I want to make sure that we don't leave anything out. So we've gone through, your journey, and we've talked a little bit about your books. Uh, what inspired you to start writing these books?
I love this question. It was actually so, and I know everybody says this about their books, so it sounds so stupid and cliche, but like, for the last 20 years, I kind of believe in psychics, and my ex-girlfriends have sort of gotten me that as presents, psychic readings and stuff. And about 3 to 4, I think, different psychics in various times of my life have told me, you need to write your story. Sorry, that's my 23-year-old cat. I can't really control her much. I just kind of
That's okay.
let her
I
roam.
I love cats. You're good company.
And she's still jumping and stuff. She's almost 23, so I'm like, you do what you want to do. So, um, but where was I? Where was I
You were,
at?
you were talking about the psychics.
Oh yeah. So, um, they about 3 to 4 of them have told me, write your life into a story. It's going to be made into a movie. And I'm like, whatever, like, I'm 20, like, okay, whatever. And then throughout my life, they just keep telling me this. And I'm like, okay, but now I'm in my, 40s, and I'm like, what do I have to write about? My life has been nothing but negative, 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 negative. I had like a horrible childhood, and I grow up, and then I get Crohn's disease, and I deal with this. Like, it's been horrible. Why? Who wants to read about that? I thought to myself, like, God, that's awful. No. And then when I was 48, I think I was 48, I read Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. I read a lot of self-help books. And that book was amazing. It brought up so many aha moments for me.
I keep hearing about this book from people. I actually ordered it.
Oh my God, it's incredible. So
It's here somewhere.
it's all about how your cellular memory stores your traumas in your body, and it comes out as something else. And this kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier. And I realized, so my whole life, people would ask me, oh my God, you were kidnapped? That must have been so traumatic. And I would always be like, I don't know. I was 4. How am I supposed to know? I was 4 years old. I don't know. And I do know, though. I didn't realize that my body knew. And that's why I was able to remember it in my breath work, which I did years before I read this book, by the way. And then I read the book and I was like, oh my God, I had to pull over on the side of the road. I was probably only a block from my house, but I had to pull over literally on the side of the road and say, I've had PTSD for 44 years and I didn't even realize it. And that's a huge chunk of what's wrong with me. And I kept reading and I read about intermittent explosive disorder, which I had never even heard about. That is usually comes up in people who have been sexually abused. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not a crazy lunatic. That's why I freak out sometimes. It's not because I'm insane. It's because I have this weird disorder. So I was able to put these names to things, right? And it was able to give me some clarity about a lot in my life. And then I looked him up. I saw they were doing a retreat at their house like the following month. So I wrote this letter to them. I didn't know that their retreats were booked up for years in advance. I had no idea. I wrote this letter to them explaining what had happened. And I didn't know until I was there that they moved stuff around and did things to squeeze me in that weekend. And so I flew to Massachusetts. And that weekend changed my life. It was pretty phenomenal. It was a group therapy thing, and it was an eye-opening experience. And I realized that I've made it through so much in life, and that I'm so resilient, and that I do have a powerful story to share, because at the end of all this, I'm a happy, well-adjusted person who enjoys life and appreciates sunshine and butterflies and the ocean and puppies and rainbows, and I'm just a really happy, like, it doesn't take much to make me happy. And this thing, I don't know why, made me realize that. And after this weekend, I started writing. That was in November, and in December, my nephew and I went to Big Bear and spent Christmas in a cabin. And I started writing in that cabin in Big Bear, which is ironic because the first chapter in my first book, Kissing Asphalt, is we're going to Disneyland. My mom was actually with her boyfriend in Big Bear on a ski trip when my father kidnapped us. I didn't even think about that till afterwards, but it's so crazy how the universe just connects things, and if we take the time to really look, you can see that.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something that I tell people all the time, and I'll put it in my own words, but I always tell people, no matter what our illness, whatever we've been through, we have so much to offer. And sometimes it might not feel like it because we're mourning the life we want to have or we used to have, but we still have so much to offer and people to be there for.
Exactly. And what I realized is that I can turn the tragedy into my life into beauty. And I can do that by doing exactly what I'm doing and being extremely vulnerable and putting my life out into the world and making myself available to people and saying, I'm here if you want to talk. And the next phase of this, which I just realized that I have huge passion for, is child molestation. I want to go into the schools. I want to start talking about pedophilia, because if we don't start talking about it, it will never change. And it needs to change. It is so bad in this country. People talk about drug use, people talk about serial killers, but the serial killers and the drug users, half of them wouldn't exist if we were able to reach them as kids and give them a voice to say, no, don't touch me. No, it's my body. And how do you reach somebody who's 6, 7 years old that this is happening to? They can't even compute what you're saying to them. Their mind's not even like advanced enough to understand what you're trying to explain. So how do you, it's like something I'm grappling with now. I've like figured this out and where I'm supposed to be helping in the world, but how do I do it? I've already reached out to one organization here in Santa Cruz who's going to have me help them at their summer camp, talk to high schoolers. I want to talk to high schoolers. I want to talk to middle schoolers. I want to talk to younger kids if I could, because it started happening to me at 7, and at 7, nobody was talking to me about that. Nobody was talking to me about grooming and how I felt like the lowly scum of the earth by everybody else around me, except for this guy who lifted me up and made me feel so special and made me feel like I was the most beautiful thing on the planet and that my opinions mattered and that my voice meant something, like where everybody else made me feel like I was nothing. Like if I had heard that when I was 7, maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't have taken me 50 years to figure out that that's what he was doing. And so
Yeah.
I found what I want to do, but I just don't know how to do it. I'm trying to figure that out right now. And yeah, I want to help. I want to help in a big way.
Well, it sounds like you're taking the steps to do that, and I'm anxious to find out how that goes.
I think it's going to help me too with my own dis-ease, because, I tell you, I've never felt as much joy inside my heart. Never in my life have I felt as much joy, except maybe when I came back from Baghdad and saw my mom for the first time. But like when somebody sends me an email, says, thank you for writing your book, it's helped me, or thank you, I didn't realize that my little girl needed help and I'm getting the help that she needs. Like, I'm not a crier, but it does that to me every time, because it's just like, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe I took something that was so horrible for me and made it into something good and something that can change the world. Like, that's what I want to do. But I'm just me. I'm just little old me, but I'm trying.
You're like a butterfly.
Yeah. Let's hope I flutter by. A butterfly that flutters by.
There we go. Okay, where is the best place for people to find and connect with you?
So I'm at kissingasphalt.com is my website, and you can pre-order the Not My Circus right now if you want to from there. You can get on my email mailing list. And also you can reach me at Instagram, Delicia_author, or resilient_AF_memoir, or Kissing Asphalt.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure to add that in the show notes so they can easily find it. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to share even just a snippet of your story. Thank you so much.
It was so much fun to talk to you. Thank you for having me on. I'm really thankful for you and people that do podcasts, as we reach so many more people than we otherwise would be able to. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure. And my Spoonie sisters, go check out Delicia. You're not going to be disappointed. Until next time, don't forget your spoon. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. The information should not be taken as a replacement for medical, clinical, professional advice, diagnoses, or medical intervention. My Spoonie sisters and guests will not be held liable for any of the consequences of such action or inaction. Trigger warning. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including, but not limited to, suicide, abuse, mental illness, and chronic disease. You are advised to refrain from listening if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. None of the guests or hosts will be responsible for your use of the information contained therein. Life is not merely to be alive, but to be well. Living a life with a chronic illness is best described with one word: unpredictable. Be Well's products are designed to make the unpredictable easier to deal with. Back when I was getting my infusions, I would have loved to have their adult zip hoodie. They even have one in pink. They also have everything from one-day pill holders to urgency buckets. So remember, they want to make your life a little easier. So be sure to check out Be Well.